That night, Lena Ward did not walk into a marriage, she walked into a sentence. Her father's blood was still fresh in her memory when she signed herself over to Adrian Moretti, a man so feared that even his silence felt like a threat. And yet, beneath the marble halls, the cold vows and the iron rules, something far more devastating was beginning to grow, a love born inside a cage. This is not just a mafia romance, it is a story about survival, emotional captivity, and the unbearable moment when a woman must decide whether the man who owns her life is also the only one willing to die for it.
On the evening Lena Ward signed her existence over, she was dressed in borrowed clothes, her father's failures staining her hands. No one asked if she wished to be the bride of the city's most dreaded man. They merely stated the consequences of refusal: her father's life, her mother's utter ruin, and a debt that would shadow their family to the grave. And so, at 23, with mascara tracing paths down her cheeks and a contract she couldn't decipher through her grief, Lena became Mrs. Adrian Moretti. She was now the property of a man whose single glance had already dismissed her as a transaction, long since forgotten. Follow this chronicle to its conclusion, tap the like icon, and tell me your city so I can map how far Lena's echo travels. The apartment was thick with the scent of rust and dread. Lena fused herself to the kitchen wall, her knuckles white from gripping counter. In the other room, her father was on his knees, hands bound, while two men in fine suits loomed above him, awaiting the signal to become executioners. "Please," the plea tore from her father's throat. "Just one more week. I promise I can get the money." The taller of the two, a scar mapping a route from his temple to his jaw, struck him. The sound cracked through the small flat like a gunshot. Lena jolted. Her mother's sobs were a ghost behind her, but Lena's gaze was fixed on the horror before her. Her mind couldn't grasp what was unfolding. "Another week?" The scarred man's laugh was a blade of ice. "You've had 6 months, Ward. 6 months filled with nothing. Mr. Volkoff's patience has expired." "I'll get it," her father rasped, blood welling on his lip. "I swear it." "You will get nothing," the second man stated, his voice flat, final, and utterly detached. He drew a pistol from his jacket, the metallic snick of him chambering around, sending a cold dread through Lena's core. "You had your opportunities." "No," her mother shrieked. Time itself seemed to shatter. Lena's body moved on pure instinct, her mind trailing behind as she stepped into the living room. "Wait, please, just wait." 3 pairs of eyes snapped to her. The color drained from her father's face. "Lena, get back." "Be quiet." The scarred enforcer grabbed her father by the hair, yanking his head back and pressing the cold barrel to his skin. "Well, what have we here? Is this his daughter?" Lena's heart hammered a frantic rhythm. She couldn't draw a breath. "Please don't hurt him. We'll find a way to pay you." "You?" The man's eyes roamed over her, a cold calculation dawning on his face. "What are you, 20? 22? What could a girl like you possess that we could possibly want?" The words died in her throat. She possessed nothing. She served tables on 5th Street, living between paychecks, drowning in loans she could never repay. She had nothing of value to these men. But then a new possibility bloomed. The businessman with the pistol lowered it slightly, his eyes cold and appraising. "How old are you?" 23, Lena whispered. "Educated?" She could only nod, not trusting her voice. "Criminal history, drug use, any mental conditions?" "What the hell are you asking?" her father began, before being silenced with the butt of a gun. "Answer," the businessman said, his tone eerily calm, as if this were a job interview and not an armed shakedown. "No," Lena managed. I have no record, no habits. I'm clean. The two men exchanged a silent, meaningful glance. An entire conversation passed between them. "What's his debt?" the scarred man asked his associate. 300,000 plus interest. Lena's legs threatened to buckle. $300,000. Her father had called it a small loan for medical costs, something temporary. He had lied. "This is what will happen now," the businessman stated, holstering his weapon. "You are coming with us. This instant. No calls, no farewells, no bag to pack. You will walk through that door, enter our car, and you will not look back." "Where are you taking her?" Her mother's voice was a high wire of panic. "That is not your concern," the scarred man said, releasing her father. "You ought to be grateful. Your daughter has just purchased your worthless life." "No," her father rasped, struggling. "No, you cannot take her." "Do you prefer the alternative?" the businessman asked, revealing his pistol again. "I am perfectly content to finish this now." Silence descended like a blade. Lena looked at her father, bloodied, broken, and pleading. She looked at her mother, her face slick with tears. They had given her life in this small apartment, had loved her the best they could, and her father had wagered it all on a debt to men who collected in blood. "I'll go," she heard herself say. "Lena, no." "I'll go," she repeated, her voice stronger, unwavering. She didn't know how, but her voice held steady. "Just don't harm them. That is the agreement, correct? I go, and you leave them be." "Smart girl." The scarred man smiled, a twisted, hideous expression. A very smart girl. They cut her father's restraints. Lena moved toward the door, on legs that felt like they belonged to a stranger. This was not real. It couldn't be. "Where are you taking her?" her mother pleaded again, her voice cracking. The businessman paused in the doorway. "To Mr. Moretti's estate. She is expected." The name struck Lena like a physical blow. Adrian Moretti. In this city, everyone knew that name. He was the phantom who ruled the docks and City Hall, whose adversaries simply ceased to exist, whose name was only spoken in hushed tones. And she was being delivered to him. "No," her father surged forward. "Please, not him. Anyone else. I will get the money, I promise." The scarred man slammed the door, cutting him off. The car was a black Mercedes with darkened windows, its leather interior worth more than her family's home. She was wedged between the two men, watching her city drift by like a memory. No one spoke. Lena desperately tried to memorize the streets, any sign that could guide her home again. But the route was a labyrinth, and she was disoriented within 10 minutes. When they left the city lights for the hills where true power resided, she abandoned the effort. "What does he want from me?" she finally asked. The scarred man glanced at her. "You will know soon enough. Is he going to murder me?" If Mr. Moretti wanted you dead, this drive would have been unnecessary. The statement was far from comforting. The estate materialized out of the gloom like a castle from a grim fairy tale. Vast iron gates parted for them, revealing a long, tree-lined avenue. The house waited at the end like a slumbering giant. 3 stories of dark stone and glass glowed from within, a warm light that felt obscene under the circumstances. As the car stopped, a butler in full uniform appeared and opened Lena's door. "Miss Ward." He spoke as though she were an invited guest, not a piece of human collateral. "Please follow me." The scarred man nudged her forward. "Move." Lena stepped out on trembling legs. The air was sharp with the scent of pine and immense wealth. She followed the butler up marble stairs and through doors that felt impossibly heavy. The inside of the mansion was more overwhelming than the outside. Soaring ceilings held crystal chandeliers over museum-quality art. Lena's sneakers squeaked on the polished floors, leaving dirty marks like a signature of her intrusion. The butler led her through a maze of corridors to a set of imposing double doors. He knocked once, waited a beat, then opened them. "Miss Lena Ward," he announced. The study was a world of dark wood and leather, with books rising to the ceiling, a fire crackling in the hearth, and behind a massive desk sat a man who made the air leave Lena's lungs. Adrian Moretti was younger than she'd imagined, perhaps in his early 30s, his dark hair swept back from a face that would be handsome if not for the utter void in his eyes. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled, and was signing documents as if she did not exist. "Sit," he said, not looking up. Lena obeyed, taking a seat across from his desk. Her hands trembled uncontrollably, so she clasped them in her lap and willed herself to breathe. Moretti finished his work, set his pen aside, and finally raised his head. His eyes were the color of storm clouds, utterly empty. "You are younger than I was led to believe," he stated. "I am 23. I mean that you look it." He leaned back, examining her as one would an object for purchase. "Your father owes Dmitry Volkov $300,000. Are you aware?" "I only just found out." "I see. Volkov intended to kill him. He would have, had I not proposed an alternative." Moretti slid a folder across the polished desk toward her. "You are going to marry me." The words felt alien, nonsensical. Lena stared at the folder, unable to move. "What?" "I require a wife for business arrangements. Volkov requires his payment. This is a solution to both our problems." He tapped the folder. "Open it." Lena's hands shook as she complied. Inside was a contract, page after page of dense text that blurred as panic seized her. "I don't understand," she whispered. The terms were laid bare, as cold and simple as a tombstone. "You will marry me. You will live in this house. You will obey my rules." The price for this obedience was her father's safety, his debts vanquished. The price for defiance was Volkov's men finishing their bloody work. "Is that clear?" he asked. "You cannot do this. It is illegal. You can't bind someone in marriage." "I am not binding you." Moretti's voice was flat, almost disinterested. "You are free to leave this very moment. But the instant you cross my threshold, your father's protection vanishes. Volkov will have him by dawn." He let the silence hang. "It is your decision." But it wasn't a decision, and they both knew the truth of it. "Why choose me?" Lena asked, despising the weakness in her tone. "For what purpose do you need a wife?" "That is of no concern to you." "If I am to be your bride, I believe I have some right to know." "You have no rights in this house?" The very air in the room seemed to chill by 10 degrees. "Let us be unequivocally clear, Miss Ward. This is a business transaction. You will be my wife in name only. You will reside here. You will appear at events upon my request. And for the remainder of the time, you will stay out of my sight. You are not entitled to explanations, nor to a partnership, nor any fantasy of what this might be. You are an answer to a problem, nothing more." Lena felt something splinter deep within her soul. Her eyes fell to the contract, the words swimming into an incomprehensible blur as she hunted for an escape that did not end in her father's death. None existed. "Where must I sign?" she heard a stranger's voice ask. A flicker of something, surprise, or perhaps approval, crossed Moretti's features, too fast to be certain. He simply reached into his desk and offered her a pen of considerable expense. Page 12. Initial all preceding pages. In 10 minutes, she signed away her entire world. Lena's hand ached by the time she was done, the pen leaving smudges on her fingers that looked like fresh bruises. Once she finished, Moretti claimed the document, scanning it with the practiced ease of a man who trafficked in souls, and consigned it to a drawer in his desk. "The wedding is tomorrow," he stated. 6 o'clock in the evening. A judge will officiate here. You will be given suitable attire. Tomorrow. Lena's voice fractured. But my parents... Your parents will be informed after the union is complete. You are forbidden to contact them until I grant you leave. He rose from his chair, a clear signal their business was concluded. Elena will escort you to your room. Do not leave it until you are sent for. My name is Lena, she said, the correction feeling absurd. Not Elena, only Lena. He gazed at her as if she had uttered nonsense in a foreign tongue. It is irrelevant. We are done. The butler materialized in the doorway as if he had been waiting for his cue just beyond it. This way, miss. Lena rose on numb limbs and followed him from the room. She heard the scrape of Moretti's chair as he settled back into his work, already forgetting her, already turning his mind to the next matter of business. The chamber they provided was larger than her whole apartment, with a king-sized bed, a private bath, and a balcony that surveyed the sprawling estate. It was a cage, only with finer furnishings. Lena sat upon the bed's edge and stared down at her own hands. The ink stains were stark brands against her pale skin. In less than 24 hours, she had fallen from a life of serving coffee to signing a contract that made her the chattel of the city's most dangerous figure. She thought she should be weeping or screaming or hurling something against the gilded walls, but instead a great void opened inside her. A vast, hollow coldness settled in her chest, making everything seem remote and dreamlike. A soft knock on the door made her flinch. "Enter," she called out, the word automatic. A woman appeared, perhaps in her mid-30s, her dark hair bound in a tight bun, dressed in a crisp blouse. She carried shopping bags and a garment bag over an arm. "I am Mara," the woman said, her accent from Eastern Europe. "I am to help you prepare for tomorrow." "Prepare?" Lena repeated, the word empty. "The wedding?" Mara placed the bags on the bed and unzipped the largest. It held a simple, elegant dress of ivory silk that surely cost more than Lena's wages for 6 months. "We must ensure it fits you." "I have no need to try it on." "Mr. Moretti requires—" "I do not care what he requires." Lena's voice was sharper than she'd meant. "He purchased me. He can be content with how I appear." Mara's expression was unmoved. "It will be less difficult if you comply." "Less difficult for whom?" "For you." A silent battle passed between them. Finally, Mara sighed, taking a seat by the window, the dress still draped across her arm. "I understand you are afraid," she said softly. "And you are angry. You are right to be both. But to fight Mr. Moretti will solve nothing. It will only make your life harder." "My life is already hard," Lena countered. "My father sold me to settle a debt. I am being married to a man I do not know tomorrow. In what way could it possibly become harder?" "You might be surprised." Mara's voice was laced with a weary sadness. "I have been in this house for 5 years. I have seen others attempt to defy Mr. Moretti. It doesn't end well for them." "And so, I should just submit, smile as if all is well?" "I am saying you must choose your struggles." Conserve your will for the fights that can be won. Mara stood and laid the dress upon the bed. Wear it or do not, but tomorrow at 6 o'clock you will be in the main hall and you will marry him. All the rest is of no consequence. She departed without awaiting a reply. Lena remained alone in the opulent prison, the silence pressing in on her. In some other part of this vast manor, Adrian Moretti was living his life, utterly unconcerned that he had just obliterated another's. She looked at the dress, then at the balcony and the 3-story drop to the earth below, and wondered briefly if it would be a sufficient escape. But the image of her father's desperate, bloodied face returned to her. Her mother's cries, the press of steel against his temple. Lena rose and went to the bath, turning the shower to its hottest setting, and stood beneath the deluge until the water ran ice cold, trying to wash away the fear, the city, the memory of hands seizing her in her own home. When at last she slipped into the cold sheets of the enormous bed, she found no rest. She simply lay awake, staring into the darkness, counting the hours until she would become Mrs. Adrian Moretti. The wedding was precisely the cold transaction she had envisioned. The judge was an old man who looked as though he wished to be anywhere else, reciting the vows with the passion of someone reading a legal document in the cavernous main hall. Lena was a vision in the ivory dress. Its perfect fit somehow deepened the wound. Mara had made her a stranger, her face and hair sculpted into something that belonged in this cold, empty world. Moretti stood beside her in a dark suit, looking as if he were closing a deal, his gaze fixed forward as the judge spoke of lies like partnership and devotion. There was no music, no flowers, no one to bear witness save for the judge, the groom, the bride, and Mara. Do you, Adrian Moretti, take this woman to be your lawful wife? I do. The words were swift, emotionless, 2 nails in her coffin. And do you, Lena Ward, take this man to be your lawful husband? Lena parted her lips to speak, but no sound emerged. Moretti's hand closed on her wrist, not with cruelty, but with firm intent, a warning. Her father's face, pale and bleeding, filled her mind. The gun, the terror. I do, she whispered. Then by the authority vested in me, I declare you husband and wife. The judge closed his book. You may kiss the bride. Moretti turned his gray, empty eyes upon her for the first time. That will not be necessary, he said. The judge paused. But it is tradition. We are finished. Moretti let go of Lena's wrist and addressed Mara. Ensure he is compensated and escorted from the premises. And just like that, her life was signed away. Lena was wed to a man who would not even feign affection, standing in a hall of marble, wearing a ring she did not recall him placing on her finger. She was Mrs. Adrian Moretti, a possession, a nobody. Moretti was already turning away, his attention on his phone. Lena stood, a statue in an expensive dress, and watched him vanish without a backward glance. Come, Mara urged gently, touching her arm. I will take you to your new rooms. I have a room already. That was a temporary arrangement. You have new quarters now. Lena allowed herself to be guided through the cold, pristine corridors, up a different flight of stairs, into a part of the house she had not yet seen. It was all the same, beautiful, expensive, and desolate. Mara opened a door to a suite that dwarfed her previous room. A sitting area, a bedroom, and a closet already filled with a stranger's wardrobe. This is the East Wing, Mara informed her. Mr. Moretti's chambers are in the West Wing. Your privacy will be respected. How very kind, Lena said, her voice hollow. There are regulations. Mara's tone became formal again. You are not to depart the estate without an escort and his express permission. All outside contact must be approved. Breakfast is at 8, lunch at 1, dinner at 7. Your attendance at dinner is mandatory. And if I refuse, then you will be brought to the dining room. It would be simpler to arrive on your own terms, Mara advised, retreating toward the door. Get some rest. Your education in our ways begins at dawn. And what is my purpose all day in this gilded cage? Mara paused at the threshold. Whatever you desire. Read, watch television, wander the estate. Simply do not leave and do not create disturbances. Or else. Or Mr. Moretti will provide a stark reminder of the penalties for breaking a contract. The chill in Mara's tone turned Lena's blood to ice. Trust my words, you do not want to learn that lesson. Then she was gone, and the silence returned. Lena drifted through her new chambers like a phantom, inspecting drawers and closets stocked with every imaginable necessity, clothing in her precise size, shoes, and jewels. A laptop waited on the desk, but upon opening it, she discovered a digital prison, most of the web blocked, all outside contact severed. She sat by the window, gazing out at the grounds, a flawless, sterile kind of beauty. Perfect lawns, sculpted flora, a fountain shimmering in the distance, a cage built of currency and marble. As night fell, Lena donned pajamas left by an unseen hand and climbed into the vast, empty bed. There were no tears, no screams. She lay in the oppressive dark, desperately trying to map a strategy for survival. Somewhere in the West Wing, the man who was her husband was likely sleeping or working or continuing his business of ruining lives. Lena closed her eyes, wondering if this was the feeling of being pulled under the water. The first week was a muted haze of silence and regimen. Breakfast was taken alone in her suite, lunch the same. Dinner was a silent affair in a grand hall that could host 30, with her at one end of the table and Moretti at the other. 20 feet of polished timber lay between them. They never spoke. He perused documents or glanced at his phone while she listlessly pushed food on her plate, counting the seconds until she was permitted to flee. Mara would materialize each morning bearing schedules and directives. The household functioned with mechanical efficiency, staffed by people who were everywhere and nowhere at once. It all ran with the precision of a timepiece. Lena discovered the rules through painful error. The West Wing is forbidden. Inquiries into Moretti's dealings are not welcome. No one will ever offer you the truth. She was an apparition in her own life, in attendance but unseen, a wife but completely alone. On the 8th day, she finally shattered. It happened over dinner. Moretti was absorbed by his tablet, ignoring her existence as he always did. Lena had passed the day in solitary confinement, staring at the walls until her mind felt frayed. Then some vital thread inside her simply tore. "Do you recall my name?" she asked the silence. Moretti didn't raise his head. "I beg your pardon." "My name," she repeated. "Can you remember it? Or am I merely the wife inside your head?" He placed his device down, his cold gray eyes finally meeting hers. "Is there a purpose to this? The purpose is that I am a person. I possess a name. I had a life before you purchased me. You entered into the contract freely." "Only because you threatened my father's life?" Lena's voice climbed, betraying her. "You left me with no alternative and you know it. I provided an option. You accepted it. Now you are dismayed by the results." He reached for his tablet once more. "Grow up!" The words landed like a physical blow. Lena sprang up so quickly her chair went over backward. "You are a vile man," she said, her voice shaking. "A cold, soulless creature who believes his wealth grants him ownership of human beings." Moretti's expression remained a flat, emotionless mask. "Have you concluded?" "No, I am not concluded. I have no interest in your wishes." He rose to his feet, and the vast room suddenly felt claustrophobic. "You want to know why I don't recall your name? Because you are of no consequence. You are a legal agreement, a signature on a page. I needed a wife for strategic purposes, and you were available. That is the entirety of it. There is no profound meaning here, no hidden, noble heart for you to unearth. This is the reality. And the sooner you resign yourself to it, the more tolerable your existence will become." Lena felt the burning pressure of tears behind her eyes. She willed them not to fall. "I hope you suffer in hell. I am already there." He walked to the door, but then hesitated. "And for the record, your name is Lena. I remember it perfectly. I simply find it irrelevant." He departed. Lena stood alone in the vacant dining hall and finally let the grief pour out. She wept for her family, for the life she once knew, for the young woman she was before this nightmare consumed her. She cried until she was hollowed out. Then she dried her face, straightened her spine, and returned to her room. If Moretti wanted her to vanish, to become another piece of expensive decor, she would prove him wrong. She didn't know how just yet, but she would discover a way. She was compelled to, because the only other choice was to drown in this beautiful, monstrous prison, and Lena Ward refused to drown, even with the water rising above her head. The following morning, Lena awoke to Mara in her doorway, wearing an expression that could almost be described as remorseful. "Mr. Moretti requires your presence in his office," Mara announced. "Now." A knot of ice formed in Lena's stomach. She had gone to sleep half certain that guards would drag her from her bed as punishment for her dinner outburst. The fact that she had seen the morning felt like a small mercy. "What does he desire?" "He did not specify, but I suggest you make haste. He is not fond of being kept waiting." Lena dressed in jeans and a sweater, pulled a brush through her hair, and followed Mara through the twisting corridors. Her heart a frantic hammer against her ribs with every footfall. She had called him a monster to his face, had wished damnation upon him. Men like Moretti did not pardon such insults. Mara tapped on the office door, swung it open, and gestured for Lena to enter by herself. Moretti was seated behind his desk, looking precisely as he always did. Composed, frigid, beyond reach. He did not acknowledge her entrance. "Sit," he ordered. Lena sat. Her hands were a tangled knot in her lap. Several long, heavy seconds ticked by. Moretti signed a document, placed it aside, and at last looked at her. "You are incensed," he observed. "I can appreciate that. But if you ever address me in that manner again, there will be consequences. Are we clear?" "Crystal," Lena uttered through clenched teeth. "Good!" He withdrew a folder from his desk and opened it. "You hold a degree in early childhood education. You were 3 credits shy of graduating when you left to care for your mother following her accident. Is this information accurate?" The sudden change of topic unsettled her. "How do you know these things? I know everything about you, Lena. Your academic records, your work history, your medical files. I know of your allergy to shellfish and that you fractured your arm falling from a bicycle when you were 9. I know your blood type and your social security number." He closed the folder. "When I acquire an asset, I ensure I understand its full specifications." The word asset made her skin crawl. Why is any of that important? because you require something to occupy your time, and remaining in your room consumed by misery is not a sustainable arrangement. He pushed a sheet of paper across the desk. There is a private academy 20 minutes from this location. They are in need of assistance with their after-school activities. 3 days per week, 2 hours each day. You will receive a salary, though it will be deposited into an account that I manage. Lena stared at the paper, not daring to touch it. You are permitting me to work. I am providing you an outlet, so you will cease haunting my residence like a specter. He settled back into his chair. You will be assigned a driver. You will be assigned security. You are not to deviate from the established route or schedule. You are forbidden from contacting anyone from your former life. You will not mention me, this house, or our situation to anyone. If you violate any of these conditions, this arrangement will be terminated. Understood? It was a leash presented as a gift of freedom. A longer leash, to be sure, but a leash nonetheless. When do I begin? Lena asked softly. Monday. Mara will brief you on the details. He took up his pen, a clear sign of her dismissal. You are free to go. Lena stood, but a question held her at the door. Why are you offering this? Offering what? This job. Last night you made it abundantly clear that you are indifferent to me. Moretti's expression remained impassive. I am. But your emotional scenes at dinner are becoming a tiresome distraction. Regard this as a matter of my own convenience. The words were meant to sting. Perhaps they did, but Lena was too transfixed by the prospect of leaving this house, even for only 6 hours a week, to analyze his motives. Thank you, she said, hating the small part of her that meant it sincerely. He did not acknowledge her. She left. Mara was waiting in the hall, and they proceeded back toward Lena's quarters. The older woman's face was a mask of neutrality, but Lena thought she glimpsed a flicker of approval in her eyes. That went better than one might have hoped, Mara remarked. Did you know about this position? I proposed it. Mara halted at Lena's door. You needed a purpose. He needed an end to his interrupted routine. This was a favorable outcome for both. So you manipulated him? I presented him with a solution to a problem he had yet to identify. The corner of Mara's mouth twitched into what might have been a smile. There is a difference. Now let's proceed. We must review the security protocols before Monday. The weekend crawled by at its usual glacial pace, but Monday morning broke with a feeling Lena hadn't known in weeks. Anticipation. She dressed with care in an outfit that felt like an echo of her old self, secured her hair, and met her driver at the main door precisely at 2 p.m. The driver was a man named Thomas, in his mid-40s, with the physique of a prizefighter but kind eyes that seemed at odds with his formidable size. He opened the car door for her without a word, and they drove in silence, leaving the hills behind as they moved toward the city. Lena leaned her head against the cool window, watching the world slide past her. Ordinary lives unfolded around her. People walking dogs, waiting for buses, clutching groceries. It was an existence she'd known just weeks before, now a ghostly memory. The school itself was a brick haven, nestled in a quiet neighborhood where trees wore the first blushes of autumn. The windows were alive with children's art. The lot held a mix of minivans and unassuming sedans. 2 hours, Thomas stated, shifting the car into park. I will be right here. Lena gave a slight nod and exited the vehicle. Her second shadow, a guard from a trailing car, took a post near the school entrance, but granted her the small mercy of not entering. The principal, a Mrs. Chen, met her with a handshake that felt sincere and a smile that reached her eyes. Mrs. Moretti, we are so grateful for your time. It's a thrill to have you with us. The name felt foreign, a costume she was forced to wear. Still, Lena smiled back, following Mrs. Chen into a vibrant room where a dozen children, between 6 and 8, were absorbed in their tasks. This is our after-school program, Mrs. Chen elaborated. It's a space for creativity, art, music, telling stories. They just need a guiding hand when they get a bit lost. She then addressed the room. Everyone, this is Mrs. Moretti. She'll be joining us from now on. A collective greeting of, "Hi, Mrs." Moretti filled the air, and in that moment, for the first time since her world had crumbled, Lena recognized herself. The 2 hours evaporated. She helped a small girl named Sophie paint her dog, mediated a heated conflict over building blocks, and held a circle of children captive with the story, their small bodies cross-legged on the rug. It was normalcy, in its most perfect and beautiful form. When Thomas materialized at the doorway to retrieve her, a sudden ache of loss pierced Lena. She bid the children farewell, promising to return on Wednesday, and walked back to the car. "A good day?" he inquired as they left the lot. "It was better than good," Lena confessed. On the drive back, she desperately clung to the feeling, that sense of weightlessness and purpose. But as the estate loomed into view, its colossal gates swinging open to devour them, the familiar pressure returned to her chest. This was her cage. The school had only been a fleeting escape. Dinner was a familiar tableau. Moretti at the head, Lena at the foot, a vast chasm of silence between them. Yet a subtle change had occurred. Lena no longer felt entirely erased. "How was your day?" Moretti asked, his eyes still fixed on his phone. The query was so unexpected she nearly fumbled her fork. "It was fine. The children were wonderful." The conversation ended there, but it was more than they had shared in a week, and Lena felt unsettled by it. She slept that night with a faint sense of reprieve from the drowning. The pattern took hold. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday were for the school. The other days were spent confined to the estate, pacing the gardens or hiding with a book. Dinners with Moretti were a gamble. Sometimes a few words were exchanged, other times only silence. Lena began charting the house in her idle hours, memorizing its quiet pulse. The staff operated like ghosts on a schedule. Maids in the morning, gardeners at noon, and cooks creating feasts that she and Moretti barely acknowledged. She found the quiet hallways and the forgotten ones. She discovered the second-floor library with its untouched books and a window seat perfect for watching the sun bleed across the hills. She learned Moretti's office was sacrosanct, open only to Mara, and a few men in sharp suits who materialized at strange hours. She saw that he kept late nights, a solitary light burning in the west wing long after the estate fell into darkness, and she learned she was perpetually under surveillance. It was never overt, just a flicker of movement at the edge of her vision, the same faces appearing across the grounds, the telltale gleam of Thomas's car trailing her brief walks to the fountain. The constant watchfulness should have bred paranoia. Instead, it mostly left her exhausted. 3 weeks into this strange new life, the ground shifted. It began subtly. Her laptop, left dormant on her desk for days, was now nudged to the left. Dresser drawers she had left ajar were now shut. A book vanished from her bedside table, only to be found 2 days later in another room entirely. At first, Lena dismissed it as her own forgetfulness, or perhaps the work of an overzealous housekeeper. But then she discovered the photograph, hidden inside one of her novels. It was a picture of her at the school, smiling with Sophie and the other children. It had been taken without her knowing. Someone had been there. Her hands trembled as she presented the picture to Mara that afternoon. Where did this come from? Mara's face lost all color. It was inside a book in my room. Somebody placed it there. Mara took the photograph, her gaze sharp and serious. Stay here. She was gone for 10 minutes. Upon her return, her face was a grim mask. Mr. Moretti will see you now. Dread coiled in Lena's stomach as she followed Mara to the forbidden office. But when Mara pushed the door open, Moretti was not alone. Two figures stood by his desk. One was his security chief, a mountain of a man named Victor. The second was younger, with intense eyes that locked onto her the moment she entered. Set, Moretti commanded. Lena obeyed. He held the photograph aloft. How long has this been going on? I'm not sure. A few days, maybe more. I've noticed things moved in my room. I thought it was just my imagination until I found this. What things? My laptop, my clothes, books, just small things. A muscle in Moretti's jaw twitched. He passed the photo to Victor. I want to know who entered her room outside the normal cleaning staff. I want a full report with names and logs before the day is over. Understood, sir. And I want security tripled around the East Wing. Nobody gets near her rooms unless I personally authorize it. Victor gave a curt nod and departed, the younger man trailing him. Lena was now alone with Moretti and Mara. Is someone trying to hurt me? Lena asked, despising the tremor in her voice. I don't know, Moretti replied, his gaze cold and analytical. But someone is watching you, and they have access to my home. He rose and paced to the window, his hands clasped behind him. You are not to leave the estate until this is resolved. Your school visits are over. But the children are not my responsibility. Your safety is. He pivoted to face her. Someone knows you are here, knows your schedule. That picture was taken 3 days ago. This person has been shadowing you for that long, completely undetected by my security. His words fell on Lena like a shroud of ice. Someone had been watching, tracking her movements, close enough to steal a photograph. Who would do this? She whispered. That is what I intend to discover. Moretti's tone was flat, but a dangerous light smoldered in his eyes. Until then, you remain in this house. You do not go anywhere unescorted. You report anything unusual to Mara. Do you understand? Lena could only nod. Say the words. I understand. Good. Mara will remain with you. Do not argue. With a slight wave, he dismissed them, his attention already on his phone. Lena followed Mara out, her legs feeling weak. Why would anyone want to harm me? She asked as they neared her room. I have nothing. I am no one in his world. I'm just... You are his wife, Mara cut in softly, and that alone makes you a target. But he doesn't even want me. Everyone in this house knows that. Do they? Mara shot her a quick look. You live under his roof. You have his name. To his enemies, you represent a weakness, a way to wound him. That's barbaric. That is the world you now inhabit. Reaching Lena's room, Mara conducted a meticulous search, inspecting every closet, window, and corner. She discovered nothing, yet the sense of violation lingered. Someone had been here, had touched her things, had watched her. I'll be just outside, Mara said. Get some rest. But sleep was impossible. She sat on the bed, her eyes fixed on the door, picturing phantom shapes in the hall and unseen hands on the knob. Each noise made her flinch. The normal settling of the old house sounded like approaching footsteps. She had believed being a prisoner here was the worst fate. She was mistaken. The hours bled away. Dinner was brought and taken. Mara delivered a tray, as Moretti had dismissed their formal, silent meal. Darkness fell, and the house grew still with that unsettling quiet it always found at night, as if it were holding its breath. Lena was finally succumbing to the exhaustion of fear when voices from the hallway jolted her awake. "You cannot simply lock her away as if she's a possession." "That is precisely what I can do," Moretti's voice replied, sharp as glass. "There is an intruder in my house, Mara. Until I find them, she will not leave this wing." "She will go mad." "Then she goes mad. It is better than her ending up dead." A beat of silence. Then Mara spoke, her voice lower. "You are worried for her. I am worried about appearing weak." Another pause. "If any harm comes to her, it signals that I cannot protect what is mine. That is not acceptable. Keep telling yourself that." Footsteps faded away. Lena lay in the suffocating dark, replaying the exchange. Moretti wasn't concerned for her safety. He was concerned for his own image, for the perception of his power. The outcome itself was no surprise. She'd anticipated it. The pain, however, was another matter entirely. The next 3 days dissolved into a slow torment of anxiety and idleness. Lena was a prisoner in her chambers, allowed out only for meals now served in a small dining area by the kitchen, not the formal hall. Mara's silent, constant vigil was both a comfort and a cage. Victor stopped by twice to deliver updates, or rather to brief Mara, as his eyes slid right past Lena. They had examined security tapes, questioned the staff, and combed through access records, but found nothing solid. Whoever violated Lena's room was a ghost, leaving no trail. On the 4th day, another summons came from Moretti. This time, a weariness clung to him. Not true exhaustion. Men of his stature never showed that, but new shadows had gathered beneath his eyes. "We have something," he began, dispensing with pleasantries. "A housekeeper named Maria gained entry to your room outside of her scheduled hours. Her story is that she was filling in for a colleague who reported sick. Do you buy it?" "Not for a second." He angled his computer screen toward her, revealing security footage. It showed a woman in uniform moving with purpose to the desk, slipping the photograph into a book, and then departing. That isn't the behavior of someone who is merely tidying up. So she was the one. She placed the photo, yes, but it was given to her by someone else. Someone else took it. He shut the laptop. Maria's silent, gripped by fear. Fear of whom? That is the pivotal question. Moretti settled back into his chair. "I have more enemies than I could ever count, Lena. Any of them might see you as a path to me. Then release me." The words escaped her before she could hold them back. "If my presence endangers you, if this creates issues for you, then just let me leave. Annul the agreement, I will vanish, and you can return to—" "No, and why not? You claimed I was insignificant. A piece of paper, so just tear it up, because the world doesn't operate that way." He rose to his feet, and the very air in the room seemed to chill. "You belong to me, Lena. I do not relinquish my possessions, and I certainly don't allow others to believe they can take them from me. This person, whoever they are, is about to learn that lesson." The sheer ownership in his tone sent a strange shiver across her skin, something other than fear she dared not inspect. "What is the plan now?" she asked. "Now, you resume your ordinary life. Your school visits start again tomorrow. But you claimed—" "I'm aware of what I said, but confining you signals weakness. It lets our observer think they have the upper hand." His gaze locked with hers, and for a fleeting moment she saw not coldness but a flicker of raw determination. You will continue your work at that school. Victor's unit will tighten security, and I am assigning you a personal detail. Mara, already. Not Mara. He crossed to the door and opened it. Enter. A woman stepped in, perhaps late 20s, with an athletic frame, dark hair pulled tight, and eyes that inventoried the room in a heartbeat. She carried herself like a career soldier, a study in controlled grace and potential energy. This is Irina, Moretti announced. Former military, specialist in close protection. From this moment on, she is your shadow. Irina gave Lena a curt nod, her face impassive. Ma'am? I have no need for a bodyguard, Lena protested. You are not being given a choice. Moretti was already turning back to his desk, the conversation over. Irina is with you wherever you go. She will occupy the room connected to yours. She is armed constantly. When she gives you an order, you obey it instantly and without argument. Is that understood? Lena's eyes met Irina's, which held nothing but professional neutrality. Just another chain, another sign that she was an asset to be guarded, not a person to be seen. Perfectly, Lena replied with a bitter edge. She walked out, Irina 2 paces behind, fighting the sensation of the world pressing in on her. That evening, Moretti actually addressed her at dinner. It was brief. A question about her readiness for school, a remark on the weather, but it was more than she was used to, and Lena found it deeply unsettling. Why are you acting this way? She finally broke the silence. Acting what way? As if you care, speaking to me as if I'm human. His fork halted midair. He placed it down with deliberation. I am not acting. Then what do you call this? What is happening between us? We are eating. You know what I'm asking? Moretti remained silent for a long, heavy moment. He then rose, took his wineglass, and moved to the window that looked out over the estate. When I was 12, he said, his back turned to her, my father was eliminated by a rival outfit. It was public, brutal, a warning to anyone else with ambitions. He paused, taking a sip of wine. My mother attempted to flee. She took my brother and me and tried to vanish. They located us in 3 days. They ended her life right in front of us. Lena felt her own breath catch in her throat. She had never known anything of his history and was suddenly unsure she wanted to. The man responsible looked down at my brother and me and said, For now, you are more valuable breathing. Moretti's voice was a flat, empty monotone. We were their prisoners for 2 years, leverage to be used against my father's old allies. They gave us enough food to survive and enough beatings to ensure compliance. How did you escape? I never escaped. I earned my way out by making myself useful, by showing I was a better asset than a hostage. He turned then, and the void in his eyes was a physical ache in her chest. I learned at a very young age that in our world, you are either owned or you are the owner. There is no other option. That isn't right. Is it not? Your father's debts are the reason you are here. You are an asset that was traded, just as I was. He returned to the table but did not take his seat. The distinction is, I will not lay a hand on you. I will not cause you harm, but I refuse to pretend this is something it is not. You are mine, Lena, and I defend what is mine. I don't belong to you, she whispered, the words lacking the conviction she intended. My ring is on your finger, my roof is over your head, your security is my burden. His jaw clenched. Someone is probing my defenses by targeting you. They must be made to understand their error. So this is all about your standing. Yes, he answered without a flicker of doubt, but that does not mean I will permit any harm to come to you. It was not a confession of feeling. It was far from love or even common decency. It was cold, strategic self-preservation, and yet it was the most candid he had been with her since they first met. Lena could find no words to answer, and so she said nothing. She finished her dinner as Moretti sat, engrossed in his phone. When she excused herself, he offered no acknowledgement, but just as she reached the doorway, his voice cut through the silence. Lena. She stopped. Do not make me regret this measure of freedom. She departed without a word. Irina stood waiting in the hall, a silent, watchful statue. They proceeded to Lena's quarters, and for the first time since she set foot on this estate, Lena felt a strange crack in her isolation. She had a guard who offered no words, a husband who viewed her as a possession, and an unknown enemy plotting to use her as a tool against him. A man who had just confirmed he felt nothing for her. Lena lay in bed, her eyes fixed on the ceiling, trying to trace the path that led her to this waking nightmare, and trying harder still to grasp why Moretti's cold vow of security had offered more comfort than anything she had felt in weeks. A return to the school should have been a relief. Instead, Lena's attention was glued to the mirrors during the drive, tracking every vehicle that lingered, every unfamiliar face that reappeared. Irina was a quiet, vigilant presence beside her in the back, one hand resting near the weapon Lena knew was always there. Thomas guided the car to the school entrance while Victor's second vehicle parked close behind. A detail of 3 armed men for a 2-hour session of children's art projects. The sheer disproportion of it might have been comical if it weren't so deeply frightening. Keep to the building's edge, Irina murmured as Lena's hand went to the door. Avoid the outer parking area. If I say to move, you do so without hesitation. I'm entering a school, not a combat zone. To an observer, there is no difference. Irina's gaze was hard and unyielding. 2 hours? And then we are gone. The children swarmed Lena as she entered the classroom, a chorus of voices telling her all she had missed. A little girl named Sophie latched onto her leg and would not be moved. We were sad without you, she said. Mrs. Chen told us you were unwell. I'm feeling better. Lena knelt to the girl's eye level, offering a smile she hoped was believable. So, what masterpiece are we creating today? The next 2 hours were a whirlwind of tempera paint, glitter, and the bright sound of children's joy. Lena helped engineer a fortress from cardboard, mediated a tense Lego negotiation, and read from 3 books to a group that couldn't pick just one. For a brief span, she could almost push aside the guard at the door, the detail outside, the stolen image of her face. Almost. But then she would see Irina's form mirrored in the glass, or see the other teacher casting anxious looks toward the armed woman in the room, and her fragile peace would shatter. When Thomas arrived to retrieve her, Lena bid the children farewell and fell in step behind Irina. The security team created a discreet bubble around them on their walk to the car, as Lena felt the weight of countless eyes on them from the school's windows. Has it always been this way? She questioned as the car departed. Before, when I visited, were there eyes on me? Yes, came Irina's blunt reply, and you never thought to warn me? It was not for you to know, now it is. The drive to the estate was a study in silence. Lena gazed outside, trying to quiet the thought of how many simple memories were now tainted, how many unseen observers had chronicled her life, how many captured images of her existed in shadow. Moretti's presence in the grand hall was an anomaly, startling Lena to a halt. And the visit, he inquired. It was fine. The children were glad I came. No issues. None. Her eyes flickered to Irina, who gave a subtle shake of her head. It was all completely normal. Good. He turned to go, but stopped. I require your presence for dinner. We have company. A cold dread coiled in Lena's gut. What kind of company? Associates. You are to be my wife. You will smile, offer pleasantries, and you will depart the moment I instruct you to. His voice was sharp. A transaction. Mara is to prepare you. Dinner is at 7 o'clock. He was gone before a reply could form, abandoning Lena in the hall with Irina. What was that? Lena whispered. You are being put on exhibit, Irina stated. Come, Mara can elaborate. Mara was already in the room, drawing gowns from the wardrobe to arrange on the bed. Her gaze lifted as they came in, her face a guarded mask. Did he inform you of tonight's events? Vaguely. What is happening? Mr. Moretti must conduct business. Your attendance projects stability in his private affairs, a sign of control. Mara presented a deep blue gown. This one. It is understated, yet refined. So, I'm an ornament, Lena stated, her voice devoid of feeling. You are his wife. That is not the same. Mara put down the dress, beginning to arrange the jewels. These men are predators, Lena. You must be cautious. Ask nothing of their work. Volunteer no thoughts. Simply smile, be courteous, and allow Mr. Moretti to speak. And if they direct questions to me, reply with brevity and defer to your husband. Mara's eyes locked with hers. This is not a visit to the school. These men hunt for vulnerabilities. Show them none. 2 hours passed. Lena stared at her reflection, a stranger in the glass. The gown was a flawless fit. The jewels were subtle, their value unmistakable. Mara had sculpted her hair into a shape of restrained elegance. She appeared to be a part of Moretti's universe, and she despised it. Are you ready? Mara inquired. No? Excellent. It means you understand. Mara guided her down to the dining hall Lena had entered only once before, the day she was wed. The room was remade. Candlelight danced on porcelain that outvalued a vehicle as wine rested in crystal. By the hearth, Moretti conversed quietly with Victor. A black suit sharpened his already menacing silhouette. When his gaze fell upon Lena, an unreadable feeling crossed his features. Gone in an instant. You appear acceptable, he remarked. The most heartfelt sentiment you have ever offered, Lena retorted, the words escaping her. Victor's lips twitched, but Moretti's face was a mask of ice. Our guests arrive in 10 minutes. You will be seated next to me. If asked about us, you will claim we met via friends and our love was swift. If inquiries are made about your past, you will be evasive. Your father was in finance, your mother, a teacher. No further details. You are asking me to lie. I am asking you to endure the night without incident. He drew nearer. Lena smelled his costly cologne, and beneath it, the acrid scent of tension, or perhaps fear. These men are not allies, Lena. They are not even my allies. They are hunters, searching for any sign of fragility. Do not be fragile. And if I fail, then the cost is ours to share. His stare lingered, and in his eyes, Lena glimpsed something new, a flicker of concern, not for her, she assumed, but for his own standing. Still, it was present. Simply follow my direction. Are you capable of that? Lena could only nod, her voice a prisoner. The bell chimed. Moretti's face became a placid, cold facade as he extended his arm. It begins, she accepted, and they moved as one to welcome the beasts. 4 men. The lead was older, perhaps 60, his hair like silver and his face a map of harsh lines. He named himself Dmitry Volkov, and ice filled Lena's veins. He was the creditor, the one who had dispatched enforcers to their home. So, we meet the celebrated bride, Volkov purred, his lips on her hand making her flesh recoil. Adrian, you neglected to mention her beauty. My private life is not a topic of discussion, Moretti replied evenly. Dmitri, you know Victor, and this is Marcus Chen, Antonio Ricci, and James Brennan. The remaining three advanced. Chen, around 40, had the eyes of a predator and a smile that was only a shape. Ricci's avuncular appearance was the most terrifying of all. Brennan was a giant, at least 6'5", his hands like mallets. They proceeded to the dining hall, where Lena was placed between Moretti and Volkov. She focused on each breath, willing her hands not to tremble as the meal began. How long has the union been? Chen inquired from across the table. 6 weeks, Moretti interjected before Lena could speak. A small affair, just family. How very romantic. Volkov's tone was laced with mockery. I was unaware you possessed a sentimental side, Adrian. There is much about me you are unaware of, Dmitri. Evidently. Volkov's attention shifted to Lena. Enlighten me, my dear. How did you two cross paths? Lena's thoughts scattered. She felt Moretti's gaze, a silent pressure. Through mutual friends, she stammered. At a fundraiser, we spoke, and we found a connection. A fundraiser? Ricci echoed, his pleasant smile fixed in place. And which was that? Is it relevant? Moretti's tone was mild, but held a threat. Our purpose is business, not my courtship. Indeed, indeed, Ricci lifted his glass. To the joyful pair. The toast was repeated. Lena drank, and the wine felt like dust in her mouth. The talk turned to commerce then, of routes and domains and unfamiliar names. She ate without tasting, trying to fade into the background, but Volkov's gaze was a physical weight, measuring her. Robert Ward is your father, is he not? Volkov's question shattered the quiet. The room fell silent. Lena's fork stopped, suspended. Yes, she answered cautiously. We have had dealings, a pleasant man, a fool with his finances. Volkov's smile was a blade. I am pleased his obligations were resolved so peacefully. The unspoken meaning poisoned the air. Every person there heard the truth. Lena was the payment for her father's debt to Moretti. A commodity, not a bride. Beneath the table, Moretti's hand clamped onto her thigh, a silent command for stillness. His grip was bruising. Robert and I reached an accord, Moretti stated, his tone a venomous whisper. His family now falls under my permanent protection. How magnanimous. Volkov's eyes shone with malice. I trust she will prove a worthy asset. The pressure on Lena's leg intensified. She bit her cheek, stifling a cry of pain. She is my wife, Moretti declared. That is the only thing of consequence. The subject changed, but the wound had been inflicted. Lena saw the shift in their gazes. Pity, amusement, cold appraisal. She was a vulnerability, a chink in Moretti's defenses. The meal stretched on for another agonizing hour. When dessert arrived, Lena's face ached from her feigned smile, her thigh throbbing from Moretti's grasp. At last he rose. Gentlemen, we shall retire to my study for libations. Lena, you are excused for the night. The dismissal was a release, and Lena accepted it with relief. She made her excuses and exited on trembling legs, feeling Volkov's predatory gaze track her departure. Mara waited in the corridor. How terrible was it? Awful, Lena's voice broke. Volkov knows. All of them do. They know I would the price for my father's debt. It is likely they knew already, Dmitry Volkov overlooks nothing. Mara led her to the staircase. Come now, let us remove that gown. But upon the second floor, voices rose from the hall below. Shh. Lena froze, hearing Moretti's voice, a sharp, contained fury. You had no right to raise that subject at my table, he was saying. Raise what? The truth. Volkov's laughter was a cruel sound. Everyone is aware you purchased her, Adrian. Your pretense changes nothing. My private affairs are not your business. But they become my business when they reveal a weakness. The girl is a vulnerability. It is obvious you are overextending yourself to shield her. I shield what belongs to me, and that is precisely the issue. Volkov's tone grew harsh. You are growing soft. You take a nobody to clear a ledger, then display her as if she has value. Whispers have begun, Adrian. They question if you have lost your steel. Let them question. I am offering counsel. Dispose of her. Return her to that wretched family of hers. Show the world you are the man from before this absurd union. Silence filled the air. Lena waited, breathless, for Moretti's answer. Leave my home, Moretti finally uttered, his tone like frost. And do not return without an invitation. You are making an error. The only error I made was permitting you to dishonor my wife at my own table. A second time will not be so lenient. Footfalls, the heavy sound of the front door. Then, stillness. Mara's hand touched Lena's arm. Come, you should not be hearing this. But Lena was frozen. Her mind was a tempest, struggling to absorb what she had witnessed. Moretti had defended her, had ejected Volkov for insulting her. The very man who had insisted she was nothing to him. Why would he do such a thing? She whispered. Because you are his wife, Mara stated simply, and regardless of his other feelings, he holds that title sacred. They went up to Lena's room, where Mara assisted her with her gown and makeup. But Lena's mind was stuck on that exchange, on the sharp edge in Moretti's voice when he ordered Volkov out. She got into bed, staring at the ceiling, attempting to piece together the puzzle of her husband, the man who saw her as property one moment and championed her dignity the next, who declared her meaningless but held her leg under the table as if afraid she might evaporate. Sleep was a long time coming. When it finally came, her dreams were a haze of gray eyes, cold hands, and voices declaring her a worthy acquisition. She awoke to sunbeams piercing the windows and Irina standing at her door. Get dressed, Irina ordered. Mr. Moretti wishes to see you. Lena's spirit sank. Right now. 5 minutes passed. Move. She donned jeans and a sweater and trailed Irina to Moretti's office, dread growing with every pace. He was going to call last night a catastrophe, brand her an embarrassment, and declare the agreement null, sending her back to her father. But as she stepped into the office, Moretti was not by himself. A woman stood by his desk, in her mid-40s, with sharp features, dressed in a pricey suit and holding a leather attaché. This is Catherine Moore, Moretti said directly. She is to be your teacher. Lena blinked. Teaching me what? How to survive in this world, he indicated the chairs. Sit. Lena sat. Catherine stood, observing her with keen, appraising eyes. Last night served as a warning, Moretti added. You are not equipped for the sort of functions you will be required to attend as my wife. Catherine will instruct you on how to conduct yourself, to parse conversations, to decipher people, and to shield yourself. I do not need shielding. I have Irina. Irina guards your body. Catherine will guard everything else. He stood and moved to the window, his back to them. These people will attempt to use you to get to me, Lena. They will pose innocent questions that are far from innocent. They will feign friendship to gather intelligence. They will hunt for any weakness and exploit it. You must be prepared. So I'm going to what? Spy school? Catherine's lips barely twitched. Something of that sort. We will begin with basic situational awareness and build toward more advanced skills. And if I decline, you won't, Moretti stated, still facing the glass, because the other option is being confined to this house forever. Is that what you desire? Lena glanced at Catherine, at her composed professional air and expensive suit, then at Moretti's rigid back and the tightness in his shoulders. When do we start? She asked softly. Now. Catherine opened her case and removed a folder. Let us start with last night. Recount every detail you recall from the dinner. For the following 2 hours, Catherine drilled her. What were Volkov's words and his exact tone? Where did each man sit, and how did they engage with one another? What type of watch did Chen have on, and what did it suggest about his financial state? Lena replied as best she was able, but it swiftly became apparent how much she had overlooked. Catherine highlighted power dynamics she had not recognized, alliances she had not perceived, and threats veiled as pleasantries. You are not a fool, Catherine said when they paused, but you are guileless. That will get you killed if we do not remedy it. I'm not trying to be a secret agent. I only wish to live. In this life, those are the same. Catherine shut her folder. We will meet 3 times a week, 2 hours per session. By the time I am through with you, you'll be able to walk into a den of predators and emerge unharmed. Is that what happened to you? A flicker crossed Catherine's face. Pain, perhaps, or regret. Yes, and I endured. You will also. She departed, and Lena remained alone in Moretti's office, absorbing it all. This was her reality now. Bodyguards training and learning to detect danger in everyday chat. The door opened and Moretti re-entered. He had been away for the final half hour of her session. How did it proceed? He asked. She believes I'm artless. You are. He took his seat behind the desk. But you are also sharp enough to learn. Catherine would not have taken you on otherwise. Why are you doing all of this? Lena questioned. This security, this training. You could just lock me away. It would be simpler. Simpler is not always better. He picked up a pen, turning it between his fingers. You were correct on one point. This marriage makes you a mark, but it also makes you a tool if you are trained correctly. People will discount you for being young and naive. That can be an advantage. So this is still a matter of business. Everything is a matter of business, but he said it while avoiding her gaze. Go. Get some rest. You have classes tomorrow and Catherine again on Wednesday. Lena stood, but she stopped at the door. Thank you. For last night, for defending me against Volkov. Moretti's hand clenched the pen. I was not defending you. I was defending my choice to marry you. There is a distinction. Is there? He finally looked at her, and for a brief second, she saw past the cold exterior to something raw beneath. Yes. Don't you forget it. Lena left, but the vision of the raw vulnerability haunted her. Moretti was lying. To her, to himself, maybe to all of them. He could profess this was all business, that she was insignificant, but his deeds told a contrary tale. The real question was, what story was it telling? And did Lena want to hear the answer? She spent the afternoon in the library trying to read, but mostly looking out at the state. Irina was seated not far away, a silent shadow Lena was growing accustomed to. As the sun began to dip, casting long silhouettes on the lawn, a movement near the garden snagged her focus. A figure slipping between the hedges, too distant to see well, but it was there. Irina, Lena said under her breath. The bodyguard was by her side instantly. What is it? There, by the fountain, someone is watching the house. Irina produced her phone and spoke quickly in Russian. Within moments, Victor and 2 more guards were sweeping the area. But by the time they got to the garden, whoever was there had vanished. Victor came to the library personally, his face grim. Did you get a clear look at them? No, just a shadow, really. They vanished before I could see anything else. Male or female? I am not sure. Victor and Irina exchanged a glance. Stay here. Do not approach the windows. They went, leaving Lena alone with her racing heart and the growing certainty that something was deeply wrong. Someone had been on the property, inside the secure zone, observing. Dinner that evening was strained. Moretti came late, his jaw taut with controlled rage. We found footprints, he said without preamble. Someone was in the garden. They bypassed the outer security and watched the house for a full 20 minutes before you noticed them. How is that even possible? That is what I'm trying to ascertain. He jabbed at his food but did not eat. This is not random, Lena. Someone is targeting you. First the photograph and now this. They want you to feel their eyes on you. For what reason? To frighten you, to frighten me, to demonstrate that they can get close anytime they wish. He put his fork down. I am increasing security measures again. You will not go anywhere without a minimum of 3 guards. That includes inside these walls. Adrian, do not argue this with me. His use of her name was so rare it stunned her into silence. Someone wants to wound you, to wound me. I will not allow that to happen. Because it would make you appear weak. Yes, he met her gaze, and because you are mine to keep safe. There it was again. That possessive tone that should not have made her feel secure, but somehow did. What if we are unable to stop them? Lena asked softly. What if they get to me anyway? Then they will wish they had never been born. The ice in his voice sent a shiver down her spine. I have built my name on making an example of those who cross my path. Whoever is doing this will learn that lesson personally. He stood and walked to the window, staring out at the shadowed grounds. Lena watched him, this man she had been forced to marry, trying to comprehend the tightening knot of conflicting emotions in her chest. She was supposed to hate him, to be engineering her escape, marking time until the contract was void or she could find a way out. Instead, she felt an urge to go to him, to stand by his side at the window and face the coming storm together. It was a dangerous thought, an idiotic one, but it was there, growing stronger each day, and Lena did not know how to stop it. The following 48 hours offered a silence more unnerving than any alarm. Lena drifted through the house, a soul awaiting its sentence, hyper-aware of each shadow, each whisper of sound. The security detail was a constant presence, armed men in hallways, cameras tracing her path, and Victor performing hourly sweeps. The estate had sealed itself into a fortress, with Lena imprisoned at its core. Catherine appeared on Wednesday morning, bringing coffee and a tablet displaying a gallery of faces. A small test, she announced, taking a seat across from Lena inside the library. Identify these individuals for me. Lena's eyes fell upon the first portrait, a woman in her middle years draped in an evening gown at some opulent gala. I don't recognize her. You'll learn. That is Vivian Castellano. Her spouse commands the Port Authority, giving him influence over half the city's shipping. She's on her third husband, has 2 sons by the first, and indulges too heavily at social events. Catherine slid to the next image. Here we have Lynn, Marcus Chen's wife. She is fluent in 4 languages, holds a Harvard economics degree, and is dismissed as mere decoration, a grave misjudgment. Why are you showing me these women? Because they will become either your allies or your adversaries, and you must know the difference before you ever share a room with them. Catherine revealed another photograph, a younger woman near Lena's own age, her platinum hair framing a predatory smile. This is Natasha Volkov, daughter of Dmitri. She is a threat. A knot of ice formed in Lena's stomach. In what way? Clever, ruthless, and devoted to her father. If Dmitri marks you as a liability, Natasha will be the blade he sends to resolve it. Catherine lowered the tablet. The circles you are about to join are their territory. They will offer you smiles, extend invitations, inquire about your new life. Every interaction is intelligence gathering. Every moment is an evaluation. So I am to trust no one? You are to trust your instincts and learn to analyze them as they are analyzing you. Catherine rose and went to the window, her posture a study in control. I stood where you stand now once, young, unschooled, wedded to a man of this life. I believed survival lay in staying unnoticed. And what was the outcome? My naivete led to my husband's death. Catherine's tone was devoid of all emotion. Because I failed to perceive the danger until it was far too late. I put my faith in the wrong soul and spoke the wrong words to the wrong woman at the wrong gathering. She turned, her gaze locking with Lena's. Do not repeat my errors. Learn much faster. For another hour, the lesson continued, Catherine drilling her on faces, allegiances, and histories. Lena's head ached with data, but a pattern began to emerge, the intricate web of power, loyalty, and debt. Ween clears throat. You are improving, Catherine noted as she gathered her things. Our next session will cover nonverbal cues. For now, commit these faces to memory. Once Catherine departed, Lena remained with the tablet, the portraits glowing in the quiet room. These were the players in Moretti's world, the figures she would have to outmaneuver to simply survive. Her gaze was still fixed on Natasha Volkov when Mara materialized at the door. You have a visitor, Mara stated, her face a carefully composed mask. Who is it? It is your mother. The room seemed to tilt on its axis. Lena shot to her feet, the tablet crashing to the carpet. What? Where is she? She is downstairs. Mr. Moretti is with her. Mara's voice was soft. He asked me to prepare you. Prepare me for what? For the terms of this meeting. You will have 15 minutes. You are forbidden from discussing this house, Mr. Moretti's affairs, or your circumstances. Victor will be present the entire time. Are you saying I can't speak to my own mother in private? I am repeating Mr. Moretti's conditions. If you wish to see her, you will abide by them. Lena felt a surge of rage, a desire to shatter something, to claim rights she did not possess, but her mother was downstairs. 15 minutes was a lifetime compared to nothing. Show me the way, she said. Her mother was in a small reception area off the grand hall, sitting on the very edge of a velvet seat as if fearing to contaminate it. She appeared more worn than Lena recalled, with more silver threading her hair and deeper sorrows etched around her eyes. The moment she saw Lena, she rose with a gasp. My girl, she whispered. They met in the center of the room, and Lena surrendered to her mother's embrace. The familiar scent of her lavender soap was a ghost of a safer time, and for a heartbeat, Lena was 8 again, cherished and home. Then the reality of this place, of what she had become, crashed back down. "Are you all right?" her mother pleaded, holding her at arm's length to search her face. "They assured me you were, but I had to see." "I am, Mom, truly." Lena was acutely aware of Victor by the doorway, of Moretti surely listening from somewhere close. "And you? How is Dad?" "We're holding on." Her mother's eyes were bloodshot, a testament to recent tears. "Your father desperately wants to see you, but they explained." "I understand he cannot, not now." Lena gripped her mother's hands tightly. "But I'm fine, I swear. This place." Her mother's gaze swept the room, absorbing the lavish decor, the art, the suffocating wealth. "It is enormous. Are you here by yourself?" "With my husband." The word felt like a lie on her tongue. "And the staff?" "I've not been introduced." "Your husband, everything happened so quickly." Her mother's voice cracked. "I am so sorry, Lena. This is all on us. If your father just hadn't—" "Mom, please don't." Lena shot a look at Victor, who was consulting his watch. Their time was vanishing. "It is what it is." "I am adapting." "But are you content?" The question struck her with the force of a physical blow. Happy? The notion felt alien. "I'm safe," she offered. The only truth she had left to give. "That is what's important." Her mother opened her mouth to speak, but the door swung open and Moretti stepped inside. He had changed into a suit, looking every bit the imperious businessman. As he approached, Lena felt her mother flinch beside her. "Mrs. Ward," he began, his tone a mask of civility. "I trust you found your visit satisfactory." "Yes, thank you for permitting it." Her mother's voice was thin and strained. "I only needed to know my daughter was well." "Lena is looked after here. You have my assurance." He rested a hand on Lena's shoulder, a clear gesture of ownership that made her go rigid. "But I must regretfully cut this short. I have pressing matters." It was an unmistakable dismissal. Her mother understood instantly, reaching for her purse. "Wait," Lena pleaded, "just one more minute." "Your time is concluded." Moretti's grip on her shoulder tightened. "Victor will escort your mother out." Lena embraced her mother one last time, inhaling the lavender scent, trying to burn the memory of her touch into her mind. "I love you," she murmured. "I love you too, my baby, always." Then Victor was leading her mother away as Moretti steered Lena back toward the stairs, and in a blink, the moment was gone. Lena held herself together until they reached the second-floor landing, where her control finally shattered. She tore her arm from Moretti's grasp and spun to face him. 15 minutes? I get 15 minutes with my own mother after 2 months? You received what I was prepared to grant, he stated, his voice cold as ice. You should be grateful. Grateful? You allowed her to believe I am happy. You performed the role of a caring husband, while I'm nothing more than my wife. That is what you are, Lena. I am your captive, and you just paraded my mother through this cage to assert your dominance. I allowed the visit because she was becoming a nuisance, appearing at the gates, contacting City Hall, threatening the press. Moretti's jaw clenched. I gave her just enough to make her cease being a problem, nothing more. She is my mother, not a problem you can manage. In my world, everyone is a problem to be managed. He moved toward her, and Lena retreated until her back met the wall. Do you desire more visits with your family? Then earn them. Demonstrate that you can be trusted not to utter a word that could get them eliminated. You wouldn't dare. I would not. But Dmitry Volkov would, as would Marcus Chen or Antonio Ricci. His fist struck the wall beside her head, and she flinched. Your parents are aware you are here. This knowledge makes them a liability. The less they comprehend about my affairs, this estate, my life, the longer they will live. Is that clear? Lena's breathing was shallow and ragged. She could feel the intense heat from his body, his cologne laced with the sharp scent of fury. I understand, she breathed. Good. He did not pull away. Your mother asked if you were content. What was your reply? I told her I was safe. A wise response. His gaze searched her own, looking for some unspoken truth. And are you safe, that is, here? With you? The question blindsided her. I don't know, am I? I do not know either. He at last drew back, raking a hand through his hair. Someone is watching this house. Someone has breached my security twice. Until I discover who and why, I cannot promise you anything. That is not very comforting. My goal is not your comfort. It is your survival. He turned toward his study. Remain in your suite tonight and lock the door. Irina will be stationed outside should you require anything. He strode off, leaving Lena in the hallway, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs, the ghost of his warmth still on her skin. Sleep would not come for Lena that night. She lay in the suffocating dark, listening as the great house groaned around her. Each creak became a footfall, each gust of wind a hand at the window trying to get in. As midnight came and went, she finally surrendered and moved to the balcony doors. Irina should have been posted outside, but a quick look revealed an empty corridor. Her stomach plunged. Where was her guard? Lena snatched her phone, pulling up Moretti's contact, an entry she'd never once touched. Her thumb hovered over the screen. A noise from the floor below turned her to stone. Muffled, urgent voices. She crept back to her door, opening it just a sliver. The hallway was still deserted, but the sounds of movement downstairs were undeniable. Too many people. Something was wrong. Lena ignored every instinct to hide, slipping into the hall and toward the staircase. She clung to the shadows, her back flat against the wall as the voices sharpened. In the garden. She's been gone an hour at least. Lena's blood ran cold. Peering over the banister, she saw Victor with Moretti and 3 other men in the foyer. A sheet-covered form lay on the marble between them. Who is it? Moretti's tone was eerily composed. Maria, the housekeeper. Victor drew back the sheet. Lena saw the woman's face for a heartbeat before averting her gaze. 1 shot to the head. Clean. Maria. The very woman who had left the photograph in her room. The one who had been too afraid to speak. Irina's location? Moretti demanded. Perimeter sweep. Victor's jaw was set like granite. We moved everyone for a full search after the last breach. Somebody knew our schedule, knew the precise moment to make their move. A traitor, then? Moretti's question was a soft, lethal whisper. Someone on my team is cooperating with the person hunting Lena. It seems so. Moretti looked away from the body. Find them. I want every soul in this house interrogated. I want their bank accounts, their call logs, their lives pulled apart. Someone betrayed us, and I want their head. And the girl? Seal the east wing. Nobody enters or leaves without my say-so. And locate Irina. I need to know why she abandoned her post. Lena's heart pounded against her ribs. She had to return to her room before they spotted her. But as she pulled back, a hand sealed itself over her mouth. She fought to scream, but the pressure intensified. An arm circled her waist, lifting her clean off the ground. "Be still," a woman's voice breathed into her ear. "I won't harm you, but you must come with me, immediately." Lena struggled, trying to wrench herself free, but her captor's grip was iron. She was dragged backward, away from the stairs and down an unfamiliar corridor. "Stop fighting me," the woman hissed. "I'm trying to keep you alive." They rounded a corner, and she was abruptly set free. Lena whirled around to see Irina standing before her. "What in God's name are you doing?" Lena choked out. "Moving you to safety." Irina's expression was grim. Maria's death was no accident. It was a warning. A warning about what? About the fate of those who try to help you. Irina seized Lena's arm, pulling her toward a door at the hallway's end. "Maria wasn't your enemy. She was trying to alert you." "Alert me to what?" Irina pulled the door open, showing a tight staircase descending into blackness. To who is truly orchestrating all of this? "I don't understand any of this." "You will." Irina began the descent, her grip forcing Lena to follow. "First, we have to get you out of the main house. If my instincts are right, no place up there is secure." They plunged into the dark, Irina's phone casting the only light. The steps felt endless, the air growing colder as they went. At last they reached the bottom, stepping into what appeared to be a wine cellar. Irina bolted the door shut behind them and guided Lena past racks of priceless vintages to a small chamber at the far end. Inside sat a simple cot, a table, and a locked cabinet. "What is this place?" Lena whispered. "A safe room. Mr. Moretti had it installed when he bought the property. Few people even know it's here." Irina unlocked the cabinet, removed a handgun, and checked the magazine with an expert's touch. "You'll wait here until I can identify the mole. I can't stay down here by myself." "You won't be. I'll be just outside." Irina looked directly at her. "But I need your trust, Lena. Can you give me that?" "I barely know who you are." "I know, but at this moment, I am all you have." Irina's phone vibrated. She glanced at the screen and cursed under her breath. "They're searching for you. I have to go back up, create a diversion." "What do I say if they find me?" "They won't find you. This room is off every blueprint. Officially, this space doesn't exist." Irina started for the door. "Do not open this for anyone but me. I don't care if it's Mr. Moretti, Victor, or God himself. You open it only for me." "How will I know it's you?" "I'll knock 3 times, a pause, then 2 more." She rapped the pattern on the door. "That's our signal. Anything else, you stay silent and hidden." Before Lena could even nod, Irina was gone. The heavy lock turned, leaving Lena entombed in the cellar room with only a cot and her mounting terror. She sat down, trying to make sense of the chaos. Maria was murdered. A traitor walked Moretti's halls, and her own bodyguard had locked her away because the house itself was a trap. The room felt like it was shrinking around her. Lena hugged her knees to her chest, focusing on her breathing. Inhale, exhale, stay calm, don't break. Time dissolved into a meaningless blur. Minutes? Hours? She had no way to know. Her phone had no service, and a lone bulb offered no clue if it was night or day. Then she heard footsteps outside. Lena froze, listening. 3 knocks, a short silence, 2 more. She unbolted the door to find Irina, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. "We've got a problem," Irina said immediately. "Mr. Moretti knows you're gone. The entire estate is locked down. He believes you've been taken." You didn't tell him where I am. I can't, not now. Irina paced the tiny space. I need more time to unmask the mole before you reappear. If the wrong person finds out you're safe, they'll just make another attempt. So what's the plan? We wait, we observe. Irina produced her phone, displaying a grid of security feeds. I've patched into the main system. We can watch everything from down here. On the main screen, Lena saw Moretti in his study, flanked by Victor and his team. His face was a mask of cold fury, but his hands were balled into white-knuckled fists. He looks furious, Lena whispered. He's terrified, Irina corrected, scrolling through the other feeds. I have never seen him this way. He's ripped this house apart, searching for you. Because I am his possession, his investment. If that's what you need to believe. Irina gave her a pointed look. But I've been with Mr. Moretti for 3 years. I have never seen him lose his composure like this. Not for business, not for money, not for anything. Lena watched as Moretti suddenly rose, sweeping his desk clear in a single violent motion before striding out of the room. The cameras tracked him through the hall to the foyer, then out onto the grounds, his search fueled by a desperation that made Lena's own heart ache. I need to let him know I'm all right, she said. Not yet. Give me 2 more hours. I can narrow down our list. Irina switched views. Right now, anyone is a suspect. Half the staff is panicked, and the other half looks guilty because they're panicked. Yeah, I just need a little time to see through the noise. And if you can't in 2 hours, then you reappear and we face whatever comes next. Irina's jaw was tense, but she hoped it wouldn't get to that. Lena's eyes were glued to the monitors as Irina flipped through views. The kitchen staff whispered in a tight huddle. Security teams fanned out over the estate. Mara stood outside Lena's bedroom, her face a portrait of fear. And Moretti was a phantom, moving everywhere, his search growing with an intensity that unsettled Lena more than anything else that night. There, Irina breathed, freezing a frame and zooming in. Look at that! The screen showed a figure slipping through the gardens. They were dressed in black, moving with a clear objective toward the east wing. Who is that? Lena asked. I have no idea, but they have no business being there. Irina was on her feet. Stay put. Lock this door. Don't let anyone in. Wait. But Irina was already out, swift and silent. Lena secured the door and turned back to the monitors, her heart hammering. She saw Irina emerge on the garden feed, shadowing the unknown person. She watched them both turn a corner, vanishing from the camera's line of sight. And then the feed cut out. All of them. Every single camera went dark at the same instant. Lena stared at the blank screens as pure panic began to choke her. Something was terribly wrong. She was moving toward the door when she heard them. Footsteps right outside in the wine cellar. More than one person, and they were getting closer. Lena scrambled backward, scanning the tiny room for a place to hide, but there was nowhere. The footsteps halted just outside. A voice warped by the thick door spoke. I know you're in there, Lena. It was not Irina's voice. It was a man. It sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Come on out. I'm not here to hurt you. We just need to talk. Lena flattened herself against the cold stone wall, trying to silence her own breathing. We can do this easy, the voice went on. Or we can do this hard, but one way or another that door is opening. Just make this easy. A pause. A woman's voice followed. Bring it down. There was a crash of metal on wood, the door splintering from the force. Lena frantically searched for a weapon, for anything, but found nothing. The door blew open, and framed in the doorway was the one person Lena never expected. Mara, a man Lena had never seen, stood just behind her. He was tall, with dark hair and the same cold gray eyes as Moretti. "Hello, sister-in-law," the man said with a smile. "My name is Elias. I believe it's time we discussed my brother." Lena's vision tunneled to the man in the doorway. He had Moretti's eyes, his brother's sharp lines. But while Adrian's face was a mask of cold control, Elias wore a wildness that was dangerous in its own right. "Mara?" Lena's voice was a ragged whisper. "What are you doing here?" "My job." Mara entered the room, her gaze apologetic yet resolute. "I am sorry, Lena, truly, but this has to happen." "What has to happen? Who is he?" "I told you I'm Elias Moretti." The man drew nearer, forcing Lena to press back into the wall. "Adrian's younger brother? The one he banished 5 years ago for daring to question his ways? I don't understand." "You don't have to. You only have to come with us." Elias motioned to the door. "Quietly is preferred, but I am not opposed to using force." "Where is Irina?" "Unconscious, out in the garden. She'll have a headache when she wakes, but nothing more." His smile was nothing like Adrian's rare flashes of warmth. This smile was made of knives. "Unlike my brother, I don't take lives unless it's necessary. Adrian will find you. He'll what? Rip this place apart. He's already doing that." Elias produced a phone, showing security footage of Adrian pacing the halls, his face a storm of barely contained fury. "He's losing his mind trying to find you. It's quite beautiful. I didn't think he had it in him to care about anyone anymore." "He doesn't care. I'm just an asset, a business deal." Elias chuckled. "You can tell yourself that, but I've watched you both for weeks. The way my brother looks at you when he thinks no one is looking. That isn't business, sister-in-law. It's something far more treacherous. You're the one who was watching me, the picture, Maria, all of it. Maria was Mara's source. The poor woman lost her nerve, threatened to confess to Adrian. We couldn't allow that." Elias spoke casually, as if talking about the weather. "The rest of it was me. Yes, I had to see what you were to my brother if you were the key to finally breaking him." "And am I?" "Oh, without a doubt," he offered his hand. "Now let's go. We're wasting valuable time." Lena looked at Mara, desperate for a sign of the woman who had guided and protected her for weeks. But Mara's expression was shuttered, professional. "How long?" Lena asked, her voice low. "How long have you been his?" "Since before I met you, mister." "Moretti, Adrian, he hired me as just another member of his staff. He never knew Elias had already found me." Mara's voice was filled with sincere regret. "I never wanted to hurt you, Lena. But Elias is right. This was necessary." "Why? What is it he wants?" "What I have always wanted." Elias's smile vanished. "What was supposed to be mine? Adrian took everything from me when he threw me out. My place, my name, my future. Now, I will take something of his." "I'm not his." You're everything." Elias's grip clamped onto her arm like steel. "Which is exactly why this works. Now move." He pulled her toward the door. Lena fought, digging in her heels, but he was far stronger. Mara followed, her face a portrait of conflict, but her silence was a condemnation. They dragged her through the wine cellar and up a staircase Lena had never seen before, emerging into a dark, deserted service corridor. The house was unnervingly quiet. Where was everyone? "This way." Elias pulled her toward a door down the hall. "My brother's security is impressive, but they can't cover every angle at once, not while they're all tearing the house apart looking for you." Someone is going to see us. I'm counting on that. He shoved through the door into the main hall. I want Adrian to know that I have you. I want him to feel exactly what he's lost. They rounded a corner and came face to face with Victor. The head of security assessed the scene instantly. Elias gripping Lena, Mara standing behind them, the terror on Lena's face. His hand dropped to his sidearm. "Let her go," Victor said, his tone lethally calm. "I think not." Elias tightened his hold, pulling Lena in front of him as a shield. "Tell my brother I have his wife. Tell him if he wants to see her alive again, he meets me in the East Garden, alone, in 30 minutes. He will kill you." "He can try." Elias began to back down another corridor. "But he won't risk her. She is his weakness now. 30 minutes, Victor. Don't let him be late." He pulled Lena through another door and down a flight of stairs. They stepped outside, the cold night air a shock against Lena's skin. The garden lay before them, transformed by moonlight and shadow. "Why are you doing this?" Lena choked out as Elias dragged her to the fountain. "If you despise Adrian so much, just kill him. Why involve me?" "Because his death is not enough." Elias stopped at the fountain's edge, finally letting go of her arm. "I want to make him suffer first. I want him to feel what it's like to have everything he values torn away. I don't matter to him." "Then why is he dismantling his own empire to find you?" Elias took out his phone and raised it. The screen showed a live feed from inside. Adrian was in the main hall as Victor spoke to him urgently. As Victor delivered the news, all color drained from Adrian's face. "Look at him, Lena. That is not the face of a man who doesn't care." Lena watched as Adrian absorbed Victor's words, his expression shifting from disbelief to rage, then to something that was almost fear. He grabbed Victor's collar, spat something sharp, then shoved him aside and stormed toward the door. "He's on his way," Elias said, satisfied. "Perfectly on schedule. And what happens then? You murder him in front of me? Perhaps, or perhaps I'll make him choose between his life and yours. I win either way." He put his phone away. "For what it's worth, I have no desire to hurt you. You seem decent. But you married into this family, so now you're part of it all. Collateral damage. You can still stop this. Whatever happened between you and Adrian, he left me to die." Elias's voice turned to stone. 5 years ago, when our enemies moved against us, Adrian saved himself and let me take the fall. I spent 2 years in a prison that makes hell seem merciful, all while he built this kingdom on my back. So no, this doesn't stop. This ends tonight. A flicker of movement at the garden's edge made them both look. Adrian emerged from the shadows just as he was told, alone. He was dressed in dark clothing, and even from this distance, Lena could feel the tension coiled in his frame. "Let her go, Elias!" Adrian called out. "Hello, brother!" Elias kept his hand on Lena's shoulder, holding her fast. "How good of you to come. I was starting to think you didn't care." "This is between you and me. Leave her out of it." "She is all of it. She is your weakness." Elias's fingers dug into Lena's shoulder. "I spent weeks searching for a way to break you. I targeted your businesses, your allies, your name. Nothing worked. You were too insulated. But then I saw you had done something monumentally foolish." "What?" "You fell in love with your wife." The words hung in the night air, an indictment. Adrian froze. "That's absurd," he said, but the words held no strength. "Is it? Then walk away. Leave her here with me and go back inside. Show me she means nothing." Elias smiled. or you can admit the truth and beg for her life." Adrian's jaw was a hard line, his gaze locked with Lena's across the space, and in his eyes she saw a pain so raw it made her own heart ache. "Please," Adrian said, his voice quiet. "Let her go. Take me." "There it is." Elias let out a sharp laugh. "The great Adrian Moretti begging. I never thought I would live to see this day. You want your revenge? You want me to suffer? Fine. I'm offering myself. Let Lena leave and you can do whatever you want to me." "Adrian, no," Lena whispered, but Elias's hand covered her mouth. "A tempting offer," Elias said, "but I believe I'll keep my options open." "Mara?" Mara stepped from the shadows, a pistol in her hand. She looked nauseated by her role, but she raised the firearm, aiming it at Adrian. "Don't!" Lena tried to plead against Elias's palm. "Here is what will happen," Elias said. "You will get on your knees, brother. You will confess what you did to me 5 years ago, and then you will beg me for her life. Done." Adrian didn't pause. He fell to his knees on the damp ground. "I left you. I chose myself over you. I have regretted it every single day." "Liar." "It's the truth." Adrian's voice was raw. "You were my brother, and I abandoned you. I'm sorry, Elias. I am so sorry." Sorry doesn't give me back 2 years of my life. Sorry does not erase what they did to me in that prison. Elias's voice trembled with fury. "But watching you lose everything, that might be a start." He uncovered Lena's mouth, only to replace his hand with the cold steel of his own gun, pressing it to the back of her head. Lena's knees threatened to give way. "A choice," Elias offered Adrian. "She dies now, or you trade places, but a life is forfeit tonight. Take me." Adrian moved to stand. "Just let her go." "No," Lena said, her voice a shard of unexpected steel. "Not for me. I am not worth this." "You're worth everything." Adrian's eyes captured hers. "I'm sorry, Lena, for it all. Forcing this marriage, treating you as an asset, for not saying you became the only light in my day. I'm sorry I failed to protect you." The burn of tears filled Lena's eyes. "Adrian, I love you," he stated, a simple, undeniable truth. "I never intended to, never wanted to, but I do." That confession, so raw and vulnerable, hung in the air between them. A hollow laugh escaped Elias. How sentimental. The beast found a heart. He aimed the weapon. "It changes nothing." "On the contrary, it changes everything." The voice was new, appearing behind them. Lena turned to see Irina emerge from the shadows, blood on her face but awake. Victor and a dozen armed men materialized behind her, their weapons all trained on Elias and Mara. "Set the gun down," Irina commanded. "This is over." Elias's grip on his weapon tightened. "You should be unconscious." "I was. Then I awoke and followed your phone's signal." She advanced, her own pistol steady. "Release her, Elias. You are completely surrounded." For a breathless moment, the world stood still. Lena felt Elias's conflict, the slight tremor of the gun against her temple. Across the yard, Adrian watched, a predator poised to strike. Then Mara lowered her gun. "It's done," she said softly. "Elias, it's done. Let her go." "Betrayer!" Elias hissed. "I never agreed to a killing. I thought we were scaring her, playing games with Adrian's mind. But Maria's gone because of you." "You've lost your way." Mara's voice was heavy with sorrow. "This is not the man I chose to help." Elias's arm fell. The weapon clattered to the ground. In that single moment, Adrian moved, crossing the space in 3 long strides to pull Lena from his brother's reach. Victor's team descended on Elias, subduing him before he could even blink. Lena was crushed against Adrian's chest, his heart a frantic drum in her ear. His hands were in her hair, on her skin, searching for any harm. "Are you injured?" he demanded. "Did he touch you?" "I'm fine. I'm okay." She leaned back, meeting his gaze. "You love me." "I just declared it to my entire security force." "A bit late to retract it now." He touched her cheek as if she were an apparition. "I regret everything." "You were ready to trade your life for mine." "Without question, you are mine, Lena. That means I shield you, even from the consequences of my own actions." Victor pulled Elias upright. The brothers' resemblance was uncanny up close. Same frame, same face, but Adrian's power was controlled, while Elias just looked shattered. "I could have ended her," Elias said, his voice empty. "I had a clear shot." "But you didn't." Adrian's hold on Lena grew tighter. "Because for all your talk, you are not a killer. You have no idea what I am. You left me behind to rot." "I know, and that will be my deepest regret for the rest of my days." Adrian stepped toward his brother, Lena still with him. "But the cycle ends tonight. No more vengeance. No more of our family's blood." "So what now? You kill me?" "No." Adrian glanced at Victor. "Get him on the first flight to somewhere far away. Give him enough cash for a new life, and ensure he understands he can never return." Elias just stared. "Why?" "Because you're still my brother." "Because I owe you at least that much." Adrian's voice was strained. "And because I am through losing the people I care for." Victor escorted Elias away, with Mara following under watch. The garden emptied, leaving only Lena, Adrian, and Irina. "I should have known sooner," Irina said, her exhaustion palpable. "Realized Mara was the connection." "You kept Lena safe. That is all that matters." Adrian drew Lena nearer. "Take the night. We can review everything tomorrow." Irina nodded and departed, leaving them alone beneath the moon. Lena looked up at the man she had married, this complex, broken soul who had just offered his life for hers. "You truly love me." "I truly love you," he said, the words coming easier now, settling into him. "I fought it. You were a contract, a means to an end, but you broke through my defenses. Your resilience, your defiance, the way you refused to be a ghost in my house." He cupped her face. "You made me remember how to feel something besides the need for power." "I love you too," Lena whispered. "I fought it as well. You are arrogant and possessive, and you acquired me like an object." "Not my proudest moment." "But you are also courageous and fiercely protective, and you knelt before your enemy for me." She wrapped her arms around his neck. "So, I suppose we're both fools." "It appears so." He bent his head to kiss her, a soft, reverent touch, as if she were fragile. When he drew away, his expression was solemn. "Things will be different now. No more treating you like a possession. No more dictating your life. You are my wife, my partner, my equal, if that is something you still want." "It is." Lena's heart felt impossibly full. "But I need one more thing." "Anything." "My parents. I want to see them, truly see them, not for some 15-minute supervised meeting." "Done. I will have them brought here tomorrow. They can stay for as long as you wish." He kissed her forehead. "Anything else?" "The school. I want to continue." "With enhanced security, of course. And I want you to tell me about your work. Not every detail, but enough so I can understand this world I inhabit." She held his gaze. "No more secrets. That is a very dangerous request. I married danger the night your men came to my door. I would rather know the truth I am facing than live shielded by ignorance." Adrian was silent for a long moment before he finally nodded. All right. I will tell you everything, but not tonight. Tonight, he murmured. I just want to hold you and know you are safe. He lifted her into his arms, carrying her back to the house. Lena laid her head on his shoulder, gazing at the cosmos above. What happens to us now? She asked. Now, we learn how to truly be married, how to build trust, how to create something that is not founded on contracts and obligations. He looked down at her. Do you think we can? I think we have to try. The following weeks were a whirlwind of transformation. Elias was flown to Europe, given funds for a new start with a clear warning never to return. Mara was released under similar terms. Her life within the Moretti organization was finished. The security detail was completely restructured with new agents and stricter protocols. Lena's parents were moved into a guest house on the property, providing both closeness and privacy. Her father wept upon seeing her, his apologies flowing until Lena gently stopped him. Their family would never be without scars, but they were healing. Catherine's lessons continued, shifting from survival tactics to true education. Lena was learning to exist in Moretti's world, not as prey, but as a player. She attended functions and galas, connecting with the wives of Adrian's colleagues, gradually establishing her own influence within his empire. School visits resumed with Irina, ever present but discreet. The children adored Lena's stories, especially the fables of clever girls who rescued themselves. And Adrian was changing. The cold, imposing man she married remained, a permanent fixture of his soul. But now it was interspersed with moments of warmth, with genuine smiles and late-night talks, with a hand that reached for hers, not to possess, but to connect. 3 months after the garden confrontation, Lena watched Adrian work in his office. He had been negotiating for an hour over something intricate and likely illicit, but his eyes found her and a smile touched his lips. Almost finished, he said, hand over the receiver. Give me 5 minutes. Take your time. She settled into a chair across from him, content in the quiet. When he finally disconnected, he rose and pulled her to her feet. I have a gift for you, he said. If it's another piece of lavish jewelry, I will throw it at your head. It is not jewelry, he guided her to the desk, retrieving a folder. It is your father's debt, the original agreement with Volkov. Lena's breath hitched as she opened it to see the very documents inside, the contract that had sealed her fate. I purchased it from Dmitri last week, Adrian said. I paid double what your father owed, but the price was irrelevant. Why do this? So that I could do this. He took the papers from her, walked to the hearth, and tossed them into the fire. They watched in silence as the flames devoured the contract, reducing it to ash. You are free, Lena. Your father's debt is gone. Our marriage is no longer a business arrangement. Then what is it based on now? This. He produced a small box from his pocket, opening it to reveal a plain gold band. No diamonds, no opulence, just a promise that I choose you every single day, not from obligation, but from want. Lena looked from the simple ring to the man holding it. The same man who once claimed she was nothing, now gazing at her as if she were his entire world. Are you proposing to me again? I am asking you to stay, to build a future with me, not as something I own, but as my partner. His voice was low and sincere. I love you, Lena Ward. Will you stay? The words were a question of freedom, not possession. The ledgers were balanced. The pact was ash. She could have fled this violent empire, returned to a quiet world of coffee steam and painted dreams. But simplicity was a cage she could never bear. Yes, she breathed. I'll stay. And as he slid the ring onto her finger, it felt nothing like the first. It was lighter, a whispered promise, not the cold weight of a shackle. Thank you, he murmured against her lips. For what? For seeing the man behind the monster. His voice cracked. For making me want to be better. He then kissed her, slow and deep, sealing a future that was never guaranteed. For choosing me when the door was open. Lena held him, anchoring herself in the storm that was their life. Outside, the setting sun bled gold across the sprawling grounds. In the distance, her parents' laughter drifted on the wind, a fragile echo from a world she'd nearly lost forever. This was no fairy tale. It was a brutal, tangled reality, still sharp with fear, but it was undeniably hers. They were forging a new world from the ruins, one painful truth at a time. I love you, she said. I love you too, Adrian vowed, holding her as if to keep himself from breaking. I will spend my life earning you. 6 months passed. Lena faced the mirror, and the reflection was a stranger. The terrified girl who signed away her life was gone. In her place stood a survivor, forged in fire, who knew how to navigate the treacherous currents of his world. Ready? Adrian stood in the doorway, clad in a suit that cost a fortune, but it was his gaze that stole her breath, a look that said she was his only anchor. Ready? She took his offered arm. Tonight, they would host a gala, using his dark fortune to build something in the light. It was her vision, backed by his formidable power. The city's elite would gather, and Lena would stand not in his shadow, but as his equal. Descending the staircase, she saw her parents waiting in the hall below. Her mother's smile was a beacon, her father's pride a hard-won victory. Irina, the ever-watchful guardian, allowed the barest hint of a smile. Even Catherine had come, her sharp eyes already dissecting the scene. Nervous? Adrian asked softly. Terrified, Lena admitted. But it's a good kind of terrified. There's a good kind, he whispered back. It's the kind that means you have something to lose. She squeezed his arm. The kind that means something is worth fighting for. He drew her closer, kissing her temple. Then I am terrified all the time. The doorbell chimed and performance began. Victor opened the door to reveal Vivian Castellano and her husband, then Lin Chen and a dozen other smiling predators. Lena took a breath and stepped forward, Adrian a solid wall at her side. This was her arena now, beautiful and lethal, but she was ready. She had endured being sold, survived assassins and betrayals, and stared into the abyss of her own soul. She had done the impossible, learned to love the man who had bought her like property, and found the capacity for redemption within him. Whatever came next, they would face it as one. Across the room, amid the false laughter, she met Adrian's gaze. He was speaking to Marcus Chen, but his attention, his entire being was fixed on her. She offered a small smile, and he returned it, a silent vow across the crowded space. In that moment, Lena knew she had chosen correctly. The contract that began their story was cinders. What was left was raw and complicated, scarred and painful, but it was real, and that was worth more than anything.